Hello and welcome to the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix preview show presented by the Edition Sports and Outside the Cockpit. My name is Sam Donzik. I'm your host. We are back again for another race weekend. Just after racing in Bahrain this past weekend, we are now racing in Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit. Obviously, a very, very fast circuit that we're all excited to see because there's multiple new changes, which we will talk about as well, with expanding different turns. For wider runoffs and wider corners. Obviously, most notably, Max Verstappen was happy to see that. I believe turn 14 or turn the last corner. I think it's turn 22 or 23 was widened, of course, because he crashed out last year there after hitting the wall on his way to an absolute screamer of a lap. But before we start with all that, let's start with our Friday practice rundown. As obviously, FP2 is now happening right now because there was a bit of a slight delay, as there was some developments that happened just outside of the track, obviously at the Ramco facility. So I'm just going to pull it up now just to see for the FP1 as we see here. So yeah, as you can see, practice one, Charles Leclerc went fastest, Max Verstappen second, Valtteri Bottas third, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Daniel Ricciardo, Lance Stroll, Lando Norris, Zhao Guanyu, George Russell, Nico Hülkenberg, Alexander Albon, Nicholas Latifi, and Mick Schumacher and Kevin Magnussen. So as you can see, the Ferrari still up at the top, but Red Bull is showing a strong amount of pace this weekend. Very, very close between the Ferrari and the Red Bull, just 1/10 in like 116th of a second off there. And then really Alfa Romeo and Valtteri Bottas is up there as well. I mean, I know it's practice, and we've seen this before from Valtteri, where he goes really quick in practice and does well in qualifying, but the race is sometimes where he struggles, and he did drop back multiple positions at the beginning of the race. But so far from this weekend, from what I can see, it seems like Ferrari's still looking really strong. Red Bull's looking really strong. Max Verstappen can really, I guess, continue to fight for that title along with Charles Leclerc for 2022. I think that's kind of your main two protagonists for the season is going to be Leclerc and Verstappen, with a Carlos Sainz as kind of a side character in it, because I mean, like, obviously he did finish second place in Bahrain, but he was far off the pace. I think it was between 13-14 seconds off his pace of his teammate Charles Leclerc. So clearly he was upset about that, and he wanted a better result, beating his teammates. So who knows? We could see him beat his teammate this weekend, and Carlos Sainz could get a race win to amp up on the parity of the season, of the fact that the new regulations, are resulting in multiple different race winners, as we saw at the beginning of other regulations as well. But I think, honestly, kind of from my Friday practice one results, from everything that I saw, it's most likely going to be Leclerc or Verstappen battling for that top spot for pole position on the race weekend for Saturday, and then also for the race on Sunday, which kind of leads me to my favorites for the weekend. Now, again, it's still early, as we can obviously see. FP2 is currently happening right now as we speak, because, again, like it was slightly delayed, and FP1 only happened this morning. So we don't have a lot of data, again, with these new cars at this new circuit of who's going to do well. But based on the data that we do have right now, it can seem that I think Ferrari's definitely going to be a favorite. Red Bull's up there, and then I want to say it either Mercedes and maybe AlphaTauri as well. AlphaTauri is going to be another kind of a sleeper team that's going to kind of sneak in there just at the kind of the right hour, at the 11th hour to, they could snag, fourth or fifth maybe on the grid, like a McLaren did last year, where, it was mainly Mercedes or Red Bull securing the first two rows, and then it was usually McLaren or a Ferrari taking on that third and fourth row. So I think we could see that this weekend with AlphaTauri, with Pierre Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda, as they qualify. They finished 5th and 6th in P1 with some decent lap times around 131, 3.17 and a 131.505 for the second-year man from Japan, Yuki Tsunoda. So I think in that respect as well, I think so far from that we can see, Ferrari's going to be the favorite. Along with Red Bull. I mean, Alfa Romeo's up there with Valtteri Bottas, but again, it's only practice. If it continues to happen in FP2 and qualifying, then maybe we could see a difference again, because this is a very fast circuit. So, the cars that have great top line speed, and again, you need a good amount of downforce, but mostly just straight line speed is what you need, especially for the big straights. So if the teams have that, then I think they can definitely look into considering that as an option, as their game plan, as potential strategies for this race weekend, which we'll get into a little bit later in the show. But continuing on in terms of my favorites, I think as it stands, Ferrari, Red Bull, AlphaTauri up there. Mercedes can be up there as kind of the third or fourth team battling with AlphaTauri, because right now, obviously, as it stands, based on what we saw from practice 1, and then also what we're seeing as well from practice 2, it just doesn't seem that Mercedes really is up there. Like, as you can see in practice 2s right now, Charles Leclerc is up there along with Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz running P3. As the session nears the draws, there's only 10 minutes left in FP2. So in that regard, it's like, so far from what we've seen and what we're used to seeing, at least so far this season, Ferrari, Red Bull up there as well. Like, again, this question is whether the reliability will be an issue for Red Bull this weekend. Can Red Bull bounce back this weekend? Now, they have said reportedly that they have fixed the issue, the inherent fuel pump issue, whatever the issue was that happened in Bahrain, and that they're not expecting a repeat of a double DNF in Saudi Arabia. So if you're a Red Bull fan like myself, you'll love to hear it. If you're, the opponents of the other team, like Ferrari, Mercedes, you're not looking too happy about that, because obviously, Red Bull has a very fast car, and they were very competitive, I think, for at least most of the majority of the race, at least Max Verstappen was with Charles Leclerc. So when you hear that again, it's like, okay, they're going to be back this weekend. We're going to have to consider them as a competition, And again, it still comes down to, what happens on race day, because, it is going to be a long race. I don't actually know how many laps it is. I forget. But regardless, it's going to be, a long race, and it's going to take a lot of effort from the car to finish the race, because, it's a lot to, it's just the beginning, I guess, to really have the race, have the car start the race and be able to compete in the race, but have the car finish the race is really the hardest part. Which is what Red Bull is hoping that they're able to do this weekend, is to have both cars finish in the points to bounce back. Because right now, as it stands, if you look at the standings, Ferrari leads 40 in the constructor standings right now. Constructor standings, if it's going to load, constructor standings. Yes, as it stands right now, Ferrari leading right now with 44 points compared to Mercedes' 27 points. And then obviously Haas right now in third with 10 points, Alfa Romeo, Ferrari 9 points, Alpine 9, AlphaTauri 4, and then all over the bottom there's Mercedes and Red Bull both finishing outside the point. Or sorry, McLaren, my bad, McLaren, not Mercedes, McLaren, finishing both outside the points last weekend. So they're hoping to kind of flip the script this weekend. And then looking at the driver standings as well, just going over to. Looking at the driver standings so far for this season, you can see Charles Leclerc leading the way with Carlos Sainz in second, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell third and fourth. Again, it's only the start of the season. We've only had one race, so basically how the race order finishes, how the standings are right now. Like, he's currently Magnussen, he finished P5 in the race, so he's P5 in the standings. That could change after this weekend, depending on how Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez do, along with Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, because that's really the biggest question is, of those other four drivers in the two teams, how can they really bounce back? And how can Red Bull, along with McLaren as well, bounce back this week? And I think the most important thing for them to focus on right now is just, taking it easy, taking it slow, getting bit by bit, taking it, not rushing it back so far this season, and not forcing the car to push the car too far too early. Because I think Verstappen did that a little bit in the race as well. And then obviously, Perez was running strong in third place with Lewis Hamilton right behind him, but then he spun and dropped right back to the end of the grid and had to retire the car, and the engine just lost on him. He lost the engine, which was quite unfortunate. So moving forward to this weekend in Jeddah at the Jeddah Corniche circuit, I think the best way for Red Bull to bounce back this weekend is really just to, take it slow, take it step by step. Figure out, once they figure out what went wrong, which they did, fix the issue, and then hopefully it doesn't happen again, because they don't want to have this issue recurring throughout the season, where again they're starting the race, they qualify second or they qualify in pole, and then they're running great for like 55, 56 laps, and then the 57th lap on the 11th hour, the car crashes the car shuts down, and it doesn't work anymore, and it just, kills the race, because that's really where their season is ruined. So they're already a leg down. They've got a lot to recover from in terms of their chances to, retain back and at least to fight with Mercedes along with Ferrari for first and second place in the constructors standings. Because, as it stands right now, currently championship leader Charles Leclerc is looking really strong this weekend. as the Ferrari is looking really strong. And it was reported as well that that the F1W75, the F1-75, the Ferrari for this year, the 2022 car, was a little bit, in terms of their engines, weren't as like they were kind of turned down. They weren't experiencing the full power. He had a lot left as well in the tank in terms of their raw power. And again, I think they're going to kind of slowly introduce new upgrades each week after week, which we've seen other teams do. Mercedes does year after year with the Mercedes cars. That obviously they start off really strong at the beginning of the year with a pretty good car, and then as the year gets on, as the season goes on, they start to make little more and more tiny upgrades, which in end turns into be an amazing race car at the end of the season. So I think that's something definitely to look forward to this weekend. Now, in terms of some potential race strategies, because we saw some interesting race strategies last weekend where it was not only single pit stops, but also double pit stops. Now, these new 18-inch tires are very interesting because, again, they're bigger, they're a little bit wider, but again, it's how these tracks are taking to the tires and how they're able to stick to that. Because we saw that with the hard tire for Lewis Hamilton, it did not work on the Bahrain circuit. He immediately was like, I've got no grip. It was terribly slow. It was really bad. The soft and the medium tires were really the tires to start on, or to be on for the majority of the race. So we're probably going to see the same thing this weekend as well. A lot of drivers start on the soft tire because they're going to qualify that in Q2 to get into Q3. And then from there, we could see teams try to go bold. They pit early, try to do the undercut, pit a little bit early, go to the hard tires and hope they can last to the end of the race. But I don't see many teams doing that, based on the fact that really, when you think about it, I mean, again, it's early data we saw from Lewis Hamilton from one car, but, if the hard tires don't go well with the track and with the new cars, then, are we going to see a lot of the hard tires this season, or is it mostly going to be soft, medium, soft? Are we going to see a lot of 3 pit stop strategy? And we might see that near a lot of times in the season, because realistically, kind of similar to IndyCar has a lot of 3 pit stop because obviously they only have the two sets of tires. So you'll see a lot of times they'll go from like soft, medium, hard. And that's kind of how it goes, because they'll start on softs, they'll go to mediums, and then they'll near the end of the race, they'll switch again back to a softer compound to have some more quicker traction and to catch the car in front of them or behind them. And like most likely in front of them. Again, if they're leading the race, then they most likely wouldn't pit again to soft tires, depending if they can have that massive advantage, which we saw obviously Charles Leclerc was able to do against Max Verstappen, because when he pitted, it was a quick pit stop and he came out just in front of the Red Bull, which was good to see. So that was, of course, very interesting to see as well. And I think that's kind of really the potential race strategies for this weekend, is that most likely it's going to be, I can see a lot of teams doing 2 stops and also 3 stop strategies, with a lot of teams starting on the softs, some teams going to the mediums and finishing the race on the mediums. Again, depends on how you manage the tires, depends on how many safety cars we have. If we have a safety car, we saw as well last race, there was a safety car, which then forced a lot of the drivers to pit in, which they did because they got a cheap pit stop out of it. So I think in that turn, in that aspect, then yeah, we will see a 3rd pit stop, which will be kind of like a cheap pit stop, which I can still consider to be part of it, but it's still a pit stop. It's just not considered an official pit stop. It's more just like it's not a green flag pit stop. It's more just like a checkered caution pit stop as they use, and it's a cheap pit stop because obviously the cars are going a lot slower as well. So yeah. And of course, the last news really of this week, so one of the last news before we get into our predictions as well, was Vettel to miss his 2nd straight race due to COVID-19. Obviously, Vettel is still recovering from COVID-19 as well, like myself. Like I have COVID-19 right now, still recovering. Only been about 5 days since I got it. So I'm still trying to recover. Now, obviously, Nico Hülkenberg is stepping in to race again for the 4-time world champion, the German driver, Sebastian Vettel. Now, what's interesting as well, what we're seeing this season a lot is that regardless of where we are in terms of the landscape of everything, I think COVID is still here. It's never going to go away. You have to learn to live with it, obviously. You can recover at home if you're triple vax, that kind of thing. But I think it's going to be an interesting fact to see, okay, throughout the season, how many times is one driver going to miss it? Because obviously we saw Daniel Ricciardo he missed it earlier because of COVID-19 as well. So he missed a lot of time in testing as well. So obviously Vettel now, he missed his second straight race. So again, in terms of the amount of race experience that he has in these new cars is very limited because he's only been in there really for testing. So I think in that aspect, it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out during the throughout the rest of the season, to see how many other drivers will have to step out because of COVID-19 complications, as well as what drivers will step in, obviously the reserve drivers, and to see how will they'll fare. Because obviously a lot of young drivers, Oscar Piastri, Liam Lawson, and also some drivers from Alpine as well, trying to make their F1 debut in terms of trying to step in. And if they're able to do that and they're able to, make an impact, then obviously that's good for them because they're trying to get out there, trying to make a difference and trying to show that they're able to, race in their F1 ready caliber, and that they're ready to race in Formula One next season. Because obviously a lot of drivers trying to make it clear to the teams that they race for, that they're able to race for an F1 team, because I think that's really the goal for a lot of F2 drivers is, stepping into the right hour, putting in a great performance, and then seeing how they will do. Alrighty, moving on now to our qualifying predictions, or at least my qualifying predictions. I mean, at least it's hard to tell really because we've only had now at least 2 practice sessions in the books from what we can see. And again, it's still very hard to tell what will happen this weekend with how it goes. Obviously, Charles Leclerc goes fastest in P2, Max Verstappen second, Carlos Sainz third, as well as some other drivers as well. So in that respect, I would have to say most likely I'm going to say Charles Leclerc is going to be on pole again. I think he can do it again. The Ferrari looks really strong. I think Max Verstappen will be there on second, and Carlos Sainz is going to be third as well for practice, because I think, for qualified. So I think I can see Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, and Carlos Sainz in the top 3. And then I see a bit of a wild card. I see Pierre Gasly and George Russell sneaking into 4th and 5th in your top 5. And then I can probably see a Lewis Hamilton, maybe Valtteri Bottas, and a Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris getting there for the top 10. Obviously, McLaren having some struggling issues early on because they only qualified 11th and 13th. They finished 11th and 13th in FP1 as it stands right now. So we can see on the live leaderboard here. So Sergio Perez, 4th fastest, Lewis Hamilton 5th, George Russell 6th, Lando Norris 7th, Esteban Ocon 8th, Valtteri Bottas 9th, Yuki Tsunoda 10th, Fernando Alonso 11th, Pierre Gasly 12th fastest, Schumacher, Stroll, Ricciardo 15th fastest, Hülkenberg, Guan Yu, Latifi, Albon, and Kevin Magnussen obviously running slowest. I know obviously he was having some issues with some hydraulic issues, which was unfortunate. But as it stands right now, it's still very close between the Ferrari and the Red Bull and Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. So I think that's really going to be the battle this weekend for pole position is going to be Max Verstappen versus Charles Leclerc. In my mind, I can see that's the most realistic position. Again, Max Verstappen on a medium tire, only 1/10 off only of Verstappen's time. Of Leclerc's time. So very, very close between the two drivers, obviously rivals in their karting days and now racing into Formula One together. Now heading over to my race predictions. Now race predictions obviously are very hard because Formula One can be unpredictable in the way that it goes. But in terms of how I can see so far and based on how my qualifying predictions go and then how my race predictions are going to go, I can definitely see Max Verstappen winning this race. And I understand, Sam, you're a Red Bull fan. You're being biased. You can point that out. Whatever you want to say. You can call my bias. I don't care. I'm just saying Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen, great rivalry. But I think Max Verstappen will take it this weekend to him just on the basis of the fact that, again, I think it's going to be a strategy call that's going to hurt out Leclerc because I think Ferrari is still learning a lot, obviously, in terms of their strategy from last season and even this season as well. They got lucky. I'm not saying they got lucky, obviously, with having both Red Bulls retire. But I think realistically, Verstappen was very close to Leclerc for many, many laps, battling him close, battling him hard. And if it weren't for, 1 or 2 other either hard push laps from Verstappen from the start on those new tire compounds when he got out of the fresh pit stop, could he have hunted him down? Could he have chased him down? Who knows? It's all what if. But I think race predictions, Max Verstappen will take the race victory. Carlos Sainz going to finish. Charles Leclerc is going to finish second, and then I see Carlos Sainz finishing third, and Sergio Perez finishing fourth, along with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell finishing 5th and 6th respectively. Then I can probably see maybe Valtteri Bottas finishing 7th, Lando Norris finishing 8th, and maybe Esteban Ocon or Pierre Gasly finishing 9th and 10th to round out your kind of top 10 for your points finishing. Because as it seems from now, what we kind of seen so far from this weekend and what we look to see as well, as FP3 goes live tomorrow from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then obviously qualifying later on in the day from 1 to 2 p.m., which we'll be doing live qualifying sessions. So you can watch along. We'll be live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. I'll be here giving you all the breakdown, giving you the live play-by-play along with the live feed update, at least for the qualifying tomorrow. But as in terms of my race predictions, yeah, that's how it is. Max Verstappen is going to take it over Charles Leclerc. And as much as a bit of a shocker because Ferrari has looked so dominant this weekend, I just honestly think that, yeah, it's going to be Max Verstappen over Charles Leclerc this weekend. And that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out theintermissionsports.com for more content. Thank you very much.